Picture a successful lawyer sitting in a corner office with Manhattan views, six-figure salary, prestigious firm, everything her parents dreamed she would become. She's also crying in the bathroom every morning before work, taking anxiety medication just to get through client meetings, fantasizing about quitting every single day. But she won't quit. She can't quit because she's trapped. Not by force, not by contract, by something far more insidious: golden handcuffs. Research from Harvard Business School reveals a disturbing statistic. 70% of high earners report feeling trapped in jobs they actively hate. 70%. These aren't struggling workers with no options. These are people making six figures who feel more imprisoned than minimum wage workers with actual freedom to leave. This creates a brutal paradox. The more successful you become financially, the less free you become psychologically. The golden ladder you climb becomes a golden cage you can't escape. Today we're exploring why high-paying jobs function as sophisticated prisons, why financial success often means psychological captivity, why the people who appear most free are often the most trapped, and why this reveals something profoundly disturbing about how modern capitalism transforms success into suffering. Because the cruelest irony is this: the prison door isn't locked. You're holding the key, but you'll never use it. The term golden handcuffs emerged in the 1970s corporate America during the rise of executive compensation packages. Companies discovered something psychologically powerful. If you paid people enough money, you could keep them doing work they hated indefinitely. Stock options that vested over 5 years, bonuses tied to tenure, retirement packages that penalized early departure, salaries high enough to create lifestyles that required those salaries to maintain. These weren't benefits designed to reward employees. They were retention mechanisms designed to create dependency. Management consultant Peter Drucker documented this transformation in his 1973 book Management, Tasks, Responsibilities, Practices. He observed that companies had shifted from buying labor to buying loyalty through financial entrapment. The strategy worked brilliantly. Turnover among highly compensated executives dropped dramatically, not because job satisfaction increased, because financial dependency increased. Early corporate psychologists noticed something troubling. The employees most financially rewarded were often most psychologically distressed. They coined a term for this phenomenon: affluent misery. By the 1980s, golden handcuffs had spread beyond executive suites into professional services, law firms, investment banks, consulting companies, medical practices. These industries discovered they could work people to physical and psychological breaking points if the compensation was high enough. 80-hour weeks became standard. Burnout became expected. Mental health problems became normalized. But people stayed because leaving meant salary cuts of 30 to 50%, because lifestyles had expanded to match incomes, because identities had become fused with prestigious job titles. Economist Robert Frank studied this phenomenon at Cornell University in the 1990s. He found that high earners consistently overestimated how much income reduction they could tolerate. People earning $200,000 believed they couldn't survive on less than $150,000. But research showed most could comfortably live on $70,000 without significant lifestyle changes. The gap between perceived necessity and actual necessity created psychological imprisonment. People trapped themselves with imaginary constraints that felt completely real. By the 2000s, technology accelerated this dynamic. Smartphones meant high-paid professionals were never truly off work. The boundaries between professional and personal life dissolved entirely. Investment banker working vacations, lawyers answering emails at midnight, consultants taking calls during family dinners. The high salary came with an unspoken expectation of total availability. Sociologist Arlie Hochschild called this the time bind. People selling not just their labor but their entire existence to employers who compensated them well enough to make the bargain seem worthwhile. The truly insidious part is how voluntary it appears. Nobody forces you to take the high-paying job. Nobody forces you to stay. You choose this prison. You lock yourself inside. But as we'll see, the psychology of choice becomes complicated when financial systems are specifically designed to exploit human cognitive biases. Researchers at Princeton University conducted a landmark study in 2010 that illuminates the psychology behind golden handcuffs. They tracked 1,500 professionals across various high-paying industries for 3 years. The results challenged fundamental assumptions about money and happiness. Income correlated positively with life satisfaction up to approximately $75,000 annually. Beyond that threshold, additional income provided no measurable increase in day-to-day happiness. Yet people earning $200,000 reported feeling more trapped than people earning $80,000. Higher earners experienced more stress, more anxiety, more depression, despite objectively better financial security. Why? Because they'd constructed lives requiring those incomes to maintain. The financial freedom that should have come with higher earnings instead created new forms of dependency. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who led the Princeton study, identified a phenomenon he called hedonic adaptation. Humans rapidly adjust to improvements in circumstances, returning to baseline happiness levels. That first big salary increase feels incredible. 6 months later, it feels normal. A year later, you can't imagine living without it. 2 years later, you need another increase to feel that same initial excitement. This adaptation creates a psychological treadmill. You keep running faster, earning more. But your emotional state remains essentially unchanged, except now you need to keep running too. Avoid falling off entirely. Neuroscientist Reed Montague at Virginia Tech studied what happens in the brain when people contemplate leaving high-paying jobs. Brain scans revealed intense activation in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. Contemplating income reduction triggered the same neurological response as contemplating physical danger. Your brain literally interprets salary cuts as threats to survival. Even when rationally you know you'll be fine, even when the salary cut would still leave you with more than adequate income. This neurological fear response makes logical decision-making nearly impossible. You're not evaluating options rationally. You're in fight or flight mode about a purely psychological threat. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely conducted experiments revealing another dimension of this trap. He presented subjects with hypothetical scenarios. Would you take a 40% pay cut to do work you love versus work you hate? When the question was abstract, 87% said yes. Then he presented the same question with concrete details. Current salary $150,000, you salary $90,000, same work preference question. Support for the pay cut dropped to 32%. The abstract principle remained. But confronted with actual numbers, loss aversion overwhelmed values. Loss aversion is a fundamental cognitive bias. The pain of losing something feels approximately twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining the equivalent amount. Taking a $60,000 pay cut feels psychologically worse than gaining a $60,000 raise feels good, even though mathematically their equivalent changes. This asymmetry keeps people trapped. The imagined pain of income reduction looms larger than the actual pain of daily job misery. Psychologist Barry Schwartz documented an additional factor in his research on decision-making. High earners face what he calls the paradox of choice. More financial resources mean more options. But more options create paralysis, not freedom. When you can theoretically do anything, deciding what to actually do becomes overwhelming. The abundance of choice itself becomes a prison. Lower earners often have clearer constraints that paradoxically make decisions easier. You can afford these 3 apartments, not those 10. You can pursue these 2 career paths, not those 7. High earners theoretically have unlimited options. This sounds liberating. It's actually paralyzing. The psychological weight of infinite possibility combined with neurological fear of loss creates perfect conditions for remaining trapped in situations that damage mental health. The research reveals something disturbing. Financial success doesn't fail to create happiness by accident. The systems that create financial success are specifically structured to prevent the freedom that success should enable. The psychological mechanisms are one thing, the practical reality is what actually keeps people imprisoned. Financial advisor William Bernstein spent 20 years studying high-income professionals who felt Trapped despite significant wealth accumulation, his findings revealed a consistent pattern: income increases didn't create freedom. They created new mandatory expenses that consumed the additional income entirely. He called this lifestyle creep, the insidious process where wants transform into needs without conscious awareness. You get promoted, salary jumps from 100,000 to 130,000 suddenly. The apartment that was perfectly adequate feels cramped. You need more space for the lifestyle matching your new status. New apartment costs an extra 1,000 per month. You've just allocated 40% of your raise to housing before considering anything else. The car that got you to work reliably now feels embarrassing parked next to colleagues' luxury vehicles. You lease something appropriate to your position. Another 600 monthly. Clothing standards shift. The suits from department stores don't meet expectations for someone at your level. You need tailored pieces from better brands. Another 300 monthly average. Dining out frequency increases. You can afford nicer restaurants now. Your social circle operates at a different price point. Grabbing drinks after work means $50 tabs instead of 20. Another 400 monthly. Within 6 months of the raise, you're spending an extra 2,300 monthly. Your 30,000 annual increase is completely absorbed by lifestyle adjustments you barely noticed making. This pattern repeats. With each promotion, each raise, each bonus, income rises, expenses rise proportionally. Financial flexibility remains constant or even decreases. Economist Juliet Shore documented this phenomenon in her book The Overspend American. She found that people consistently underestimate how much their spending increases alongside income. When asked, high earners believe they saved approximately 40% of income increases. Financial records showed they actually saved less than 15%. The remaining 85% disappeared into lifestyle inflation. The truly insidious part is how these expenses stop feeling optional. They become identity markers, symbols of success. Proof you've arrived. Sociologist Thorstein Veblen coined the term conspicuous consumption in 1899 to describe this phenomenon, spending to signal status rather than meet genuine needs. But modern conspicuous consumption operates more subtly than Veblen's original conception. It's not just about showing off to strangers, it's about maintaining position within your professional peer group. When everyone at your firm lives in certain neighborhoods, sends kids to certain schools, vacations at certain destinations, opting out feels like professional suicide. You're not keeping up with some abstract Joneses. You're maintaining credibility with clients who expect certain markers of success, fitting in with colleagues whose social events happen in expensive contexts. This creates profound peer pressure that operates largely unconsciously. You're not deliberately choosing status symbols. You're simply doing what people at your level do. Financial planner Carl Richards calls these decisions money scripts, unconscious beliefs about what money means and what you should do with it. For high earners, the dominant money script is often successful people live like this. The script runs automatically, making spending decisions before conscious thought engages. Combined with lifestyle inflation is the golden cage effect of children's education. Private school tuition of $30,000 to $50,000 per child annually becomes non-negotiable once you start. Pulling kids out feels like betraying their future. You're trapped for 12 years minimum. College savings expectations shift. When your peers plan for full-pay Ivy League education, planning for state school feels like parenting failure. Another $200,000 per child in expected savings. The mortgage amplifies everything. High earners stretch to buy in best school districts or prestigious neighborhoods. They commit to housing costs consuming 40 to 50% of income. This violates every financial planning rule suggesting 25 to 30% maximum. But everyone at the office bought in this price range. The bank approved the loan. It must be manageable, except it's not. The massive fixed housing cost eliminates flexibility. Job change becomes nearly impossible if it involves any income reduction. You're literally mortgaged to this salary level. Researcher Elizabeth Warren studied bankruptcy among high-income families. Her findings were shocking. Families earning over $100,000 annually filed bankruptcy at increasing rates. Not from job loss alone, from inability to adjust expenses downward when income dropped even. Temporarily, they'd build lives requiring every dollar of high income. Any disruption became catastrophic. The high income that should have provided security instead created fragility. The psychological impact of this trap is profound. You know you're overspending. You know you should save more. You know you're creating dependency. But the social end. Psychological forces pushing lifestyle inflation feel more powerful than rational financial planning. You're not choosing this path consciously. You're being swept along by currents you barely perceive. And with each passing year, with each additional commitment, the handcuffs tighten. The golden cage becomes more elaborate. Escape becomes more unthinkable. Beyond financial mechanics lies something even more psychologically binding, the fusion of identity with professional role. Psychologist William James wrote in 1890 that our sense of self extends to our possessions, accomplishments, and social positions. We don't just have jobs, we are our jobs. When someone asks who you are at a party, you don't describe your personality or values. You state your occupation and employer. I'm a lawyer at Sullivan and Cromwell. I'm a VP at Goldman Sachs. This linguistic pattern reveals something profound. Your job title has become your identity. Your employer has become your tribe. Social psychologist Henry Touchful studied this phenomenon he called social identity theory. Humans derive significant self-worth from group membership. The more prestigious the group, the more self-worth it provides. Working at a prestigious firm isn't just employment. It's membership in an elite tribe that elevates your social status. Your resume becomes your social credentials. This creates a psychological dependency far more powerful than financial dependency. Leaving the high-paying job means leaving the prestigious tribe. It means losing the identity that's been carefully constructed over years or decades. Who are you if you're not a partner at the firm? What's your worth if you're not a director at the company? How do you introduce yourself if you can't name-drop the prestigious employer? Researcher Herminio Barra at London Business School studied professionals who attempted career transitions away from high-status positions. She found the psychological difficulty of identity loss exceeded the practical difficulty of income reduction. People grieve the loss of professional identity like grieving a death. The business card that once opened doors becomes worthless. The professional network built over years fragments. The dinner party conversational currency devalues. You're starting over socially. Not just professionally. The high-status professional identity provided social shortcuts. Without it, you're just another person without obvious markers of achievement. Status anxiety compounds this problem enormously. Philosopher Elaine de Botton documented how modern society creates constant status comparison. We're perpetually measuring ourselves against others. Perpetually anxious about our relative position. For high earners, the comparison group becomes other high earners. You're not comparing yourself to median income. You're comparing to the successful people surrounding you. This creates a treadmill where you raise simultaneously privileged compared to society and inadequate compared to your immediate peer group. The partner earning $400,000 feels unsuccessful compared to the partner earning $800,000. The VP feels like a failure compared to this VP. The merely wealthy feel poorer on the truly rich. This relative deprivation is psychologically real despite being objectively absurd. Economist Richard Easterlin documented what's now called the Easterlin paradox. Beyond basic needs, happiness depends more on relative income than absolute income. Earning $200,000 when peers earn $150,000 feels better than earning $300,000 when peers earn $400,000. This means the high income that should provide satisfaction instead fuels constant inadequacy. You can never earn enough to feel successful. There's always someone earning more. Status anxiety also operates through what sociologist Pierre Bourdieu called cultural capital, the knowledge, behaviors, and possessions that signal class membership. High earners must constantly acquire and display the right cultural markers, read the right publications, vacation at the right destinations, have opinions on the right topics. This cultural performance becomes exhausting, but dropping it means social exile from the professional class you've worked years to join. The anxiety intensifies because status is inherently precarious, and like inherited aristocracy, Professional status must be continuously earned and defended. Miss quarterly targets and your status drops. Get passed over for promotion and peers advance past you. Make the wrong strategic bet and you're sidelined. This precariousness creates chronic stress that wealth should theoretically eliminate. Instead, wealth makes the stakes of status loss feel even higher. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on fixed versus growth mindsets applies devastatingly here. When professional identity is fixed, I am a successful lawyer, any threat to that identity becomes existential. You can't just be temporarily unsuccessful. You are a failure. This makes pivoting away from prestigious but miserable work psychologically impossible. Leaving would mean admitting your identity was fraudulent, that you're not actually the person your title suggested. The golden handcuffs aren't just financial, they're existential. You've spent years becoming someone. Walking away means becoming no one. Starting over means admitting the previous identity was performance rather than authentic self. For many high earners, this psychological cost exceeds any financial cost. They'd rather be miserable in a prestigious prison than happy as nobody in particular. The cruelest irony is that the identity they were protecting so desperately was often constructed to meet others' expectations anyway. Parents' dreams, society's definition of success, peer groups' validation. They're suffering to maintain an identity they never consciously chose. But it's the only identity they have. Losing it feels like psychological death. High-paying employers don't accidentally create golden handcuffs. They engineer them with sophisticated psychological precision. Organizational psychologist Adam Grant studied retention strategies at major consulting firms and investment banks. His research revealed systematic exploitation of cognitive biases. Companies use what behavioral economists call commitment escalation. They get small initial commitments, then gradually increase demands while increasing compensation. First-year associate works 60 hours weekly. Challenging but manageable. Salary is good. Benefits are solid. You can handle this. Second year brings more responsibility. 70-hour weeks, but salary increased 20%. Bonus was substantial. The extra work feels justified by extra compensation. Third year means 80-hour weeks. Weekends often required, but now you're senior associate. Salary jumped again. You're on partner track. Just a few more years of grinding. Each step seems reasonable from the previous step. You never consciously decided to work yourself into burnout. You just took the logical next step repeatedly until you were trapped. This gradual escalation exploits the sunk cost fallacy. The more you've invested in a path, the harder it becomes to abandon even when the path clearly isn't working. You've already given 3 years to this firm. Walking away now means those years were wasted. Better to keep going. Maybe it gets better after partnership. It doesn't get better. Partnership brings more responsibility, more hours, more stress, just higher compensation to make the misery financially worthwhile. Companies also engineer social bonds deliberately. Team dinners, office happy hours, company retreats. These aren't just perks, they're retention mechanisms. Research from Stanford Business School shows that social connections at work are the strongest predictor of whether someone stays or leaves. Stronger than compensation, stronger than job satisfaction. So companies invest heavily in creating social bonds among high-value employees. Your colleagues become your friends. Your friends become your identity group. Leaving the job means losing your social world. The open office layout wasn't designed for collaboration. It was designed to create social surveillance, when everyone can see everyone. Social pressure to match the longest hours intensifies. If everyone else is working late, leaving at 6 feels like quitting early. You stay not because work requires it but because social norms demand it. Prestige management is another sophisticated tactic. Companies carefully cultivate external prestige while internally creating hierarchies that keep everyone striving. You're simultaneously elite compared to outsiders and inadequate compared to those above you internally. This creates perfect conditions for golden handcuffs. High external prestige makes leaving feel like failure. Internal hierarchy makes staying feel necessary to prove yourself. The compensation structure itself is weaponized psychology. Base salary is stable and expected, but bonuses and equity create variable rewards on unpredictable schedules. This is identical to how slot machines create addiction. Psychologist B.F. Skinner proved that variable ratio reinforcement schedules create the strongest. Behavioral conditioning. You can't predict when the reward comes, so you keep playing. The unpredictability keeps you engaged. Hoping next year will be the big one. Stock options vest over 4 years with cliffs at 1 year. This creates golden handcuffs by design. Leave before a year, and you forfeit everything. Leave before 4 years, and you forfeit significant wealth. Each year you stay, the invested options grow larger. Walking away means leaving more money on the table. The trap tightens annually. Companies also exploit what psychologists call the planning fallacy. We consistently underestimate how long things will take and overestimate our future capabilities. They promise it gets better after this busy season, or hours improve once you make senior, or partnership is when you get work-life balance. These promises are rarely true, but they keep people enduring current misery for promised future improvement that never materializes. By the time you realize the promises were false, you've invested years. You're financially dependent. Your identity is fused. Your social world is embedded. Escape becomes unthinkable. Management consultant Marissa Mayer, during her time at Google, notoriously designed benefits to keep employees at the office longer: free meals, laundry service, haircuts, medical care. These weren't generous perks. They were strategic elimination of reasons to leave the office. Why go home when everything you need is at work? The effect was employees working longer hours while feeling like the company cared about their well-being. Perfect manipulation. Former Facebook executive Antonio Garcia Martinez described the culture more honestly. We're not a family. We're a professional sports team. We pay you extremely well. We expect total dedication. Don't confuse the two. At least that's honest. Most companies maintain the fiction of caring about employee well-being while systematically designing systems that destroy it. The golden handcuffs aren't accidental market forces. They're deliberate management strategy. Companies studied human psychology specifically to discover how to trap valuable employees while making the trap feel like success. The financial trap is visible, the psychological trap is insidious, but the physical health consequences are what actually kill people. Cardiologist Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying stress physiology. His research at Stanford revealed how chronic work stress literally damages the body at cellular level. When you're constantly stressed, your body remains in fight or flight mode. Cortisol floods your system continuously. This isn't designed for modern office work. It's designed for escaping predators. Chronic cortisol elevation causes systematic damage. Blood pressure rises. Inflammation increases. Immune function weakens. Sleep quality deteriorates. Cognitive function declines. Ironing. Professionals experience these effects at dramatically higher rates than general population. A longitudinal study from Harvard Medical School tracked health outcomes of investment bankers, corporate lawyers, and management consultants over 20 years. By age 50, these high earners showed cardiovascular health profiles comparable to average 60-5-year-olds. Their biological age exceeded chronological age by 15 years. Hypertension rates were 43% higher than matched controls. Type 2 diabetes incidence was 38% higher. Heart attack risk was 52% higher. These aren't genetic predispositions. These are direct consequences of chronic work stress, combined with lifestyle factors common among high earners. Emergency room physician Dyke Drummond documented physician burnout specifically. He found 78% of doctors experience symptoms of burnout. 78%. These are people who spent decade plus in training, who carry massive educational debt, who build identities around medical expertise, who earn substantial salaries, and nearly 4 out of 5 are burning out from the work itself. Burnout isn't just feeling tired, it's psychological and physical collapse from sustained overwork. Christina Maslick at Berkeley defined burnout through 3 dimensions: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, reduced personal accomplishment. You're too tired to feel emotions properly. You start viewing people as objects or obstacles. You lose sense of meaningful impact from your work. This manifests physically: chronic fatigue that sleep doesn't resolve, frequent illness from suppressed immune function, digestive problems, headaches, muscle tension. But high earners rarely seek help. Admitting burnout feels like admitting weakness. Professional culture treats psychological struggles as character flaws rather than predictable responses to unsustainable conditions. The suicide statistics are horrifying. Physicians die by suicide at twice the rate of general population, dentists at even higher rates. Veterinarians show the highest professional suicide rates measured. These aren't learning stress workers. These are highly compensated professionals with prestigious positions. The golden handcuffs don't prevent suicide. In some cases, they contribute to it. The trap feeling becomes existential. You hate your work, but you can't leave. You're suffering, but you can't admit it without jeopardizing your position. The psychological pressure builds with no release valve. Substance abuse provides temporary relief. Research from the Journal of Addiction Medicine found addiction rates among high-earning professionals exceed general population significantly. Lawyers show alcoholism rates 3 times higher than average. The pattern is consistent: high stress, easy access to money for substances, professional culture normalizing heavy drinking, shame about struggling preventing seeking help. Cocaine use among Wall Street professionals became so common it was cultural cliché, not because finance attracts addicts, because the work stress drives people to seek relief through stimulants. Sleep deprivation compounds everything. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker documented how chronic sleep restriction below 7 hours nightly causes cumulative damage that cannot be recovered through weekend catch-up sleep. Investment bankers averaging 4 to 5 hours nightly aren't just tired, they're systematically damaging cognitive function, emotional regulation, and physical health. But the professional culture treats sleep as weakness. Bragging about how little sleep you need becomes status symbol. You're tough, dedicated, willing to sacrifice for success. You're actually destroying your health, but admitting that would mean questioning the entire system. Family relationships deteriorate under sustained work pressure. A study from the American Psychological Association tracked divorce rates across professions. High stress, high compensation fields showed divorce rates 40 to 60% higher than average. Pattern is predictable. Work demands 80-hour weeks. Family gets whatever energy remains, which is usually nothing. Relationships can't survive sustained neglect. But leaving the high-paying job often isn't an option within marriage either. The family lifestyle depends on the income. The spouse's expectations were built around that lifestyle. Walking away threatens everyone's security, so you stay in the job that's destroying you. Because leaving would destroy your family financially, but staying destroys your family relationally. There's no good option. Children of high-earning parents show elevated rates of anxiety and depression. Psychologist Cynthia Luther researched affluent youth mental health. She found teenagers from wealthy families exhibited higher rates of psychological problems than teenagers from middle-class families. The mechanism isn't mysterious. Dad works 90 hours weekly. Mom is exhausted from managing everything alone. Kids learn that success means sacrificing well-being and relationships. They internalize pressure to achieve at unsustainable levels. They develop anxiety about maintaining family status. They lack emotional connection with perpetually absent parents. The golden handcuffs don't just trap the person wearing them, they damage everyone in their orbit. Most tragically, people rarely calculate these costs when making career decisions. You compare salary numbers. You weigh prestige factors. You consider career trajectories. You never formally calculate how many years of life expectancy am I trading? Or what's the dollar value of my marriage? If you did that calculation honestly, the high-paying job would frequently lose. But we don't think that way. We assume we can handle the stress. That will be the exception. That the health consequences happen to other people. They don't happen to other people. They happen to everyone who sustains this level of stress long enough. The only variable is timing. Not everyone remains trapped. A small percentage of high earners successfully escape golden handcuffs. What makes them different? Researcher Joseph Grenny studied professionals who left prestigious high-paying positions for lower-paying work they found meaningful. His findings revealed consistent patterns. Successful escapees shared one critical characteristic. They'd maintain financial discipline during high-earning years despite peer pressure toward lifestyle inflation. They drove older cars while colleagues leased luxury vehicles. They lived in modest homes while peers bought mansions. They saved aggressively while others spent freely. This wasn't deprivation. It was strategic freedom preservation. They recognized the trap and refused to walk into it. Financial planner Vicki Robin documented this approach in Your Money or Your Life. She found that people who tracked spending carefully and questioned each expense remained free to make career changes. The key metric wasn't absolute wealth. It was the gap between spending and income. People who maintained large gaps had options. People who spent everything they earned were trapped regardless of income level. Some successful escapees used what author Tim Ferriss calls mini retirements. They worked intensively for fixed periods, saved aggressively, then took months or years off before returning. This approach prevented burnout by building recovery time into the career structure. They never stayed trapped long enough to lose themselves. Others negotiated alternative arrangements within their fields. A corporate lawyer will call. Sarah negotiated reduced hours at 70% pay instead of leaving entirely. She took Fridays off, limited weekend work, accepted slower partnership track. Her income dropped from $280,000 to $196,000. Her mental health improved dramatically. She was still well compensated, but she'd reclaimed life outside work. Interestingly, her career didn't suffer as predicted. The quality of her work during focused hours exceeded what she'd produced while burned out working longer hours. Some professionals escaped by building side businesses during high-earning years. A management consultant named Marcus spent evenings and weekends building a software product. After 3 years, his side business generated enough income to replace consulting work he hated. He quit the prestigious firm, took significant pay cut initially, but maintained autonomy and control over his life. Within 2 years, his business matched his previous income while demanding half the hours. The pattern among successful escapees is clear. They planned escape years in advance. They made deliberate choices to preserve options. They rejected the cultural script of lifestyle inflation. Most importantly, they separated identity from job title early. Sarah didn't derive self-worth from being partner at prestigious firm. Marcus wasn't emotionally dependent on consultant identity. They had robust senses of self independent of professional roles. This allowed them to leave without experiencing identity death that paralyzes others. Leaving was just changing jobs, not losing themselves. Geographic arbitrage provided escape for others. Several high earners relocated from expensive coastal cities to lower cost of living areas. This meant significant salary reductions, but housing costs dropped even more dramatically. Taking a $60,000 pay cut while reducing housing costs by $40,000 annually meant net $20,000 improvement in financial flexibility. They had smaller salaries, but more discretionary income and better quality of life. The prestigious job in expensive city had created illusion of success while delivering financial stress. Common thread among all successful escapees was rejecting conventional definitions of success. They stopped caring what peers thought. They stopped comparing themselves to colleagues. They defined success personally rather than culturally. This psychological shift was prerequisite to escape. As long as you measure success by external standards, golden handcuffs remain locked. Only when you define success internally do you discover you held the key all along. Understanding the trap is necessary. Escaping requires specific strategic actions. First strategy involves radical honesty about your financial reality. Most high earners have never actually calculated their minimum viable income. Do this exercise now. List every expense in your life, not what you spend, what you must spend for acceptable lifestyle, housing, transportation, food, healthcare, education if you have children, insurance, utilities, debt payments. Be honest but not dramatic. You probably don't need the luxury apartment, but you need housing. You don't need new car every 3 years, but you need reliable transportation. Financial expert Ramit Sethi suggests the actual number is usually 40 to 60% of current spending for high earners. Not the 100% people believe they need. Calculate that number precisely. Write it down. This is your freedom number. Any income above this is optional. Knowing this number changes psychology immediately. Second strategy is the escape fund. Start saving aggressively, not for retirement decades away, for freedom 12 to 24 months ahead. Target 12 months of minimum expenses in liquid savings. This creates psychological buffer that makes leaving thinkable. You won't actually need 12 months. But knowing you have it removes panic from decision making. You can evaluate options rationally. Rather than from fear, many people discover that simply building the escape fund makes current job more tolerable. The trap opens psychologically once you know you could leave. Third strategy involves deliberate identity diversification. Stop introducing yourself by job title. Stop defining yourself through employer. Actively cultivate identity outside work. Take up serious hobby. Volunteer for cause you care about. Build relationships not connected to professional network. Develop competencies unrelated to career. This seems tangential to escaping golden handcuffs. It's actually central. The more identity you have outside work, the less psychologically catastrophic leaving becomes. Fourth strategy is lifestyle reduction. Experimentation. Don't immediately quit job and slash expenses. That's terrifying and usually fails. Instead, experiment temporarily. For 3 months, live on 70% of your current income. Bank the 30%. See what lifestyle changes are actually required. Most people discover they barely notice the reduction after initial adjustment. This builds confidence that income reduction wouldn't be devastating. Some discover they actually prefer simpler lifestyle. Fewer possessions mean less maintenance stress. Smaller housing means less cleaning. Older car means less anxiety about scratches. Fifth strategy involves career bridging rather than career jumping. You probably can't go directly from high-paying corporate job to minimum wage barista pursuing your passion. The financial and psychological gap is too large. Instead, plan intermediate steps. Reduce hours at current job. Take lower position in same field with better balance. Move to adjacent industry with lower pay but better culture. Each step reduces income modestly while improving quality of life. Sequential moderate changes feel manageable where dramatic change feels impossible. Sixth strategy is negotiation before resignation. Many people assume their only options are stay in current role or quit entirely. They never explore middle ground. Before leaving, have honest conversation with employer about what would make staying acceptable. Reduced hours, remote work, different projects, modified responsibilities. You might be surprised what's negotiable once you're genuinely willing to walk away. Employers often prefer retaining talented people at reduced capacity over losing them entirely. The key is negotiating from genuine willingness to leave, not as bluff, not as manipulation, as authentic preference for different arrangement. Most important strategy is redefining success. You cannot escape golden handcuffs while measuring success by handcuff standards. As long as you value prestige, status, and impressive titles, you'll remain trapped. Success must become internal. Time with family, meaningful work, personal growth, physical health, mental peace, autonomy over your days. These won't impress people at cocktail parties. You can't put them on LinkedIn. Nobody will be impressed when you explain them, but they're actually what makes life worth living. The impressive achievements you sacrificed for, they don't actually create well-being. They create the appearance of success while destroying the substance of life. The moment you genuinely embrace this shift, the golden handcuffs unlock, not because circumstances changed, because your values changed, and therefore what counts as prison versus freedom changes. We began with a simple question: why do 70% of high earners feel trapped in jobs they hate? The answer reveals itself through layers. Financial dependency created by lifestyle inflation. psychological imprisonment through identity fusion, social pressure from professional cultures, corporate systems designed to exploit human cognitive biases, health consequences that make escape feel increasingly urgent yet increasingly impossible. But the deepest answer is more uncomfortable. We trap ourselves. The golden handcuffs aren't locked by external force. We forge them ourselves through thousands of small decisions that seem reasonable in isolation but create prison in aggregate. Accepting the promotion that requires longer hours, buying the house that stretches the budget, enrolling children in expensive schools, leasing the car that signals status, joining the country club where clients socialize. Each decision makes sense individually. Together, they create dependency that feels absolute. The truly disturbing part is how voluntary it appears. You chose the job. You chose the lifestyle. You chose the prestigious prison. Except you didn't really choose. You were pushed by systems specifically designed to push you. You were influenced by culture that equates your worth with your income. You were manipulated by employers who studied psychology to discover how to trap valuable workers. The appearance of choice obscures the systematic removal of actual choice. But here's what matters. Understanding the trap is the first step to escaping it. Every person who successfully escaped golden handcuffs did so by recognizing the patterns we've discussed. They saw how lifestyle inflation worked. They understood identity fusion. They recognized corporate manipulation. They calculated the health costs. Most importantly, they rejected the cultural definition of success that created the prison. Success isn't the corner office. It's not the prestigious title. It's not the six-figure salary. It's not the impressive resume. Success is having agency over your own life. It's doing work that feels meaningful rather than soul-crushing. It's having energy for relationships that matter. It's maintaining physical and mental health. These simple things become revolutionary when you're trapped in golden handcuffs. The freedom to choose how you spend Tuesday afternoon. The ability to take vacation without checking email. The option to pursue work you find interesting regardless of prestige. Most people won't escape. The psychological and financial forces are too powerful. The social pressure too intense. The identity fusion too complete. They'll remain in jobs they hate, earning money they don't need, buying things they don't want, impressing people they don't like, sacrificing health they can't recover. Until retirement finally offers freedom they're too damaged to enjoy. But some will escape. The ones who recognize the trap before it closes completely. The ones willing to disappoint others' expectations. The ones brave enough to define success for themselves. The golden handcuffs aren't locked. They never were. You're holding the key. You've always been holding it. The only question is whether you're brave enough to use it. Whether you're willing to trade prestigious prison for ordinary freedom. Whether you can let go of who others think you should be to become who you actually are. The door is open. It's always been open. You just have to walk through it. Everything you think you'll lose by leaving. It was never actually yours. It was borrowed identity, rented status, leased prestige. What you'll gain is infinitely more valuable: yourself, your time, your health, your life. The choice, despite everything we've discussed, remains yours. What will you choose?